So this isn't in Ukraine, this is in Estonia. And these are British tanks and these are other European tanks that are carrying out training exercises in case Russia tries to take the Baltics, in case Russia keeps on marching west. And this is happening because the Russian threat is increasing every single day in Europe. And if you drive a few kilometers this way as well, you'll see a new Baltic line. This is a defense line that's being dug to stop Russian tanks steaming across the border into the Baltics. And it's not just me saying this. If you listen to Russian propaganda, if you listen to the Kremlin, they've been putting out endlessly that they want to keep marching west. Putin has said that every soldier that is Russian, every square foot that they've set foot on, is Russian.
А старинное правило, там, где ступает нога русского солдата, то наше.
And the reason I've come here to Estonia is because of what's happening in Alaska. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin talking about peace, Putin talking about a ceasefire. And this is evidence that Putin is completely uninterested in peace. And Estonia are especially prepared for this situation right now because Estonia has had Russia as its neighbors and they know what Russia is capable of. They've been carrying out espionage across this country and across electronic warfare systems. And now they're preparing for the worst case scenario, and that's for Putin's army to march into this country. And the soldiers all around me here, they're from the British Army, there's US Marines, there's French. These are vital exercises so that Europe is prepared for Putin to carry on marching west. And this is really important to remember at a time like this. In Alaska, when the world media gathers around Putin, listening to him talk about peace, listening to him talk about ceasefires, there are tanks being fired here into the forests of the Baltics in preparation for the opposite of that. Because Putin is talking nonsense when he says he wants peace. And I've been here in Estonia for a couple of days now, and almost everyone I've spoken to from the government representatives have said that they fully believe that Russia will carry on, that Russia will try and take this country. This country was colonized by the Soviet Union for decades. Every single person who is from Estonia has some sort of link to that period of time. And so they know exactly what Russia is capable of and what Russia will be willing to do unless it's stopped. And deterrence is one of the most important ways to deal with the Russian threat, because there is a scenario where this won't be a training exercise. This will be real life. These tanks will be firing against Russians in the Baltics if Putin isn't stopped, if Russia isn't stopped. So we've just left that training ground, and Zelensky has just left the White House with a bunch of European leaders, and his entire strategy has changed in the way that he's speaking to Donald Trump. And in some ways, it's as effective as frontline strategy, and that is to pander to Trump's ego, to smile and to change the way that he dresses, to basically please Donald Trump. This is what Putin has been doing from the beginning with the ridiculous painting that was commissioned of Trump after his assassination attempt, and obviously with Putin bringing up endlessly when he was in Alaska about how the election was stolen from Trump. And now Zelensky is realizing that, you know what, one of the best ways we can get the US on board, get Trump on board, is to basically just placate him and to pander and stroke his ego. And if you look at the very end of the conference, Donald Trump turns around, all the European leaders are standing with him and points to a massive portrait of him, looking really heroic on the wall. This is how his mind works right now, and this is where his mind is at. And it looks like Trump was pretty happy with this meeting. Not everyone in that room. If you look at the back, behind the scenes, J.D. Vance looking pretty pissed off, pretty furious, shaking his head. He looks pretty humiliated. So does the journalist. I wouldn't really call him a journalist, but the journalist that berated Zelensky for not wearing a suit. Zelensky sort of clapped back at him pretty well.
President Zelensky, you look fabulous in that suit.
That's the one that attacked you last time.
But you are in the same suit. You see, I changed.
But two of the more concerning things that happened in this meeting were, number one, Trump had absolutely no mention of sanctions against Russia, and I don't think he's willing to do that no matter what happens in these talks. And sanctions against Russia are the only way that this war ends, because the only way that this war is being paid for is by money, is the Russian economy. That's what pays the soldiers' salaries. That is the entire industry of the war in Russia. Their gas exports, their oil exports that pays for the soldiers' salaries. And it looks like Trump is completely uninterested in sanctioning Putin. That wasn't even discussed, which is a shame. And the second thing that happened was there was a huge map on the wall in the room of Ukraine, and it showed which percentages of the Donbass were still under Russian occupation and were still being held by Ukraine, to really hammer home what this is about. Because right now, Putin has steered the entire conversation to the Donbass. That's what he wants. But in the last 24 hours, there's been a British intelligence report released that details exactly what it would look like for Russia to take the Donbass. Because Russia are pretending right now like they've already encircled it, like they've already basically taken it, and it'll all be over in a second. This report shows that in current pushes, in the numbers of people dying right now, it would take 4.4 years to take the 4 regions that Putin wants: Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia, and 1 million more Russians killed. And that's basically unattainable for Russia. Russia's economy can probably continue this maximum for another year before the reserves run out. They're already raiding banks, they're already raiding Gazprom's reserves. There's basically a year left in Russia's tank, and they cannot fight for another 4.5 years. They would have to start massive mobilizations in Moscow. People wouldn't put up with it, so it's not possible. So what Putin is asking for is actually physically impossible for him to get himself without America's support. And America, in the past, if we look at history, has supported Russia. At times it's been desperate for help. In the 1920s, they begged America for help during their famine that they created. And America sent food aid. And then years later, look what they did in World War II. They carved up Europe. So every single time Russia gets desperate, they ask America and everyone they can for help. And that's basically what happened in Alaska. And that trip is still being celebrated today in Russia. There was a new storming that happened, a new assault that happened in Zaporizhia in the last 24 hours with American flags on the top of the tanks, Russian tanks. And that's a middle finger to the West, to the US. It's a middle finger to Ukraine to basically say, we're doing this because the US backs us. So Russia's still celebrating. It's unfortunate that the main conversation about sanctions still isn't happening. But Zelensky's come out of that White House looking good with a new strategy, looking good surrounded by world leaders. And for the first time, it really makes NATO look strong. It makes Europe look united, and that is vital at a time like this. So it's going to be really interesting times. These are the last few days that I'm in Estonia, and I'm going to be putting together a documentary about where the new front line could be if Putin gets what he wants, and that's the Baltics. And I'll be bringing more daily reports on what's happening in the Donbass as soon as I get back to Ukraine. So if you want to watch that, please hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.